Greetings from a twilight Himalaya. It's been a long day and it looks like it's finally falling asleep on itself, which is good. And I thought I will grab a moment and share with you something that I wrote a few days ago and dive a little deeper, and hopefully some meaning would emerge at whatever stage one is. So I begin. One cannot stagnate at any cost. Thoughts are triggers for stagnation. In a moment, we can exit the flow dimension into myriad matrices of the collective or the individual. So how can thought patterns stagnate the spirit? Through fear as its main weapon. It may happen as logic or strategy, etc., which means fear may present itself as logical or as strategic or as practical. But the fact is, these are various disguises to make itself more acceptable. But it is eventually the fear vibration which dislodges from the flow vortex. So the main idea for a practitioner of the spirit is to be synchronized with the greater spirit through his own spirit, which is a flow state. So it has nothing to do with mental omissions and commissions. It is simply a state of unhappening, where things are happening. One is a light-hearted agency of something that even he may not fully know at any given moment. So the moment we are arrested by the fear quotient, we slip into the rabbit hole of its downward frequency. And of course, anyone who is a practitioner of the spirit will know the meaning of frequency, which means that when we fall into our individuated, conditioned self, we lower our frequency, become more gross. And when we slide out of that space into the sacred unknown, our frequency becomes lighter and we are not so saturated with self tendencies. Okay? In the course of a day, if one is aware, this can happen many times, and a silent pattern weaves itself around multiple storylines with its stale narrative. So, in the course of a day, as we interact with experience, we often trip into our mental states. And even though the nature of experience may be different, the narrative which fixates on the various different stories of experience, will come from its own very stale and outdated perspective, because it's coming from the self. It's coming from experience which is already dead and buried. So no one is exempt, as the culture of society is interlaced by fear, which may be called prudence or caution, but in actuality, no one knows the fine line where fear intrudes other mental states or inner dialogues. So basically, of course, nobody is exempt. Whoever has a mind tends to circulate back into its various stalemate states. Experience only has to nudge us just a little bit harder, and down we go again, you see. It is a very predictable self pattern that is looped and looped and looped, and even a lifetime does not tire of facing the same ridiculous dead dialogue, which no longer even, which has become an echo of itself, because there is no more real-time voice left. But still, we fall for it. Okay. To remain in the flow dimension, one is required an easy vigilance or awareness, and become conscious of interdimensional frequencies as they ebb and flow. So basically, the way we can step into something more meaningful without seeking meaning is to become aware of the interdimensional nature that we are, and how we dance between the various boundaries of frequency. That is to become aware that we are not just a singular state being. We have various states, and those states become apparent by the frequency we entertain at any given moment. This is not fixating on any chant or idol or breath, but the invisible energetic vortex standing beyond the matrix of lower states, compelling us to think lower thoughts, generating lower actions, and leading to lower karmic entanglements. Okay. So basically, this is not about following a method. This is about looking yonder and beyond the horizon of self. Because that and the self is basically the matrix of the self, which interacts in a dimensional frequency with the matrix that has been formed by intergenerational societal, cultural, and all sorts of systems which mankind has evolved over time, we interact with that matrix. Our own karmic matrix interacts with that matrix, which is collective. And we fall into lower states, thinking lower thoughts, and eventually finding ourselves in lower karmic entanglements, which again, in a very vicious cycle, drag us down, lower and lower. To remain in the flow is to remain in the Shambhala of the psychic space. Psychic space is not mind. Psychic space is beyond mind. Okay? And the Shambhala, that pure space, that pure land, is there, which also reconfigures the physical apparatus of the body. So when we are in higher frequency, higher vibrational states, this also reconfigures our physical body. And we may actually begin to look different. Of course, we will feel different, and it's a vibrational alignment and an atomic restructuring which happens. We are no longer dulled and made heavy by a base vibrational frequency which weighs us down and ages us in a predictable manner. Okay. And from there one trapezes into the matrix as need be. So from here, once one has established in the state of a higher frequency, one can trapeze down from the vortex into the matrix, and it becomes more of a game, not a crooked game, which is psychological, but a game like a child's play. You see, it amounts to a vacation from the mind and working from there only if required. You see, it's a mental vacation. The mind is, I say that the mind is a bad neighborhood. We don't need to live there. We need to take a vacation whenever and as frequently as is required. We don't need to live there constantly, dwelling on the same things, brooding on the same subjects, and grooving into the same karmic grid lines. We don't need to do that. The greatest myth is that to function in the world, we need to be its dimensional citizen. This is a myth. Actually, if we want to live with some semblance of peace and joy in this world which is psychologically driven and psychologically suffering, we need to be able to shift dimensions. And we need to become adepts at that. I hope the video was not too complex, and I hope that it will enable some understanding. Thank you and good night.